really quickly.
Yeah, I think that's always good.
I realized we didn't do it last time, and I think most people are so familiar with Zoom now, it's almost like an unsaid thing, but sometimes it's nice to just mention it so that people know they can use those features.
Yeah, I always forget it's there. I just like pipe up.
Yeah. Or go like this.
Like, yeah.
I still can only see about 8 people maximum. So I have to kind of just navigate around.
Joe, I realized I was on mute when I was saying this, but if you want to see more faces, if you have the kind of people's boxes pane open, you can hover your mouse over the sides of it and you'll see that you can actually drag it and expand it and like get more little heads in the window.
I will give that a try.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I'll change this real quick.
I was gonna buy more chicken.
Unmute. And now they
That
can,
first button to the left.
Yep.
Yeah.
Erica, can you hear us?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Erica, I'll leave it to your call as to when we have enough folks to get rolling.
I am just gonna give it one more minute here. We're not missing very many people, which is great.
Mike Black can't get in, so can you resend the link?
Yes.
And then Tim Rosen probably will not be able to get a personal thing that came up.
Okay,
I'll try to join. but
great. So it was
Mike Black
Mike
is
Black.
having trouble for some reason. You might need to reset the link. So,
I will do that right now.
okay,
Okay, thanks. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna resend the Zoom link to one of our community members. All right, I think we are ready to get rolling. So, hi everyone, I am Erica Palmer, Planning Manager for the City of Sherwood. Thank you for attending our first Community Advisory Committee meeting for the Sherwood West Relook project. We're going to be going over meeting materials this evening and kind of what the next steps are. But before we get into all of that, I want to take the opportunity to kind of go around and just kind of get to know everyone, and for all of you to get to know a little bit about each other. I know these times, you know, we're online, it's we're not meeting in person. It kind of makes for, you know, I don't know, it doesn't, you know, facilitate that, you know, personal type of meeting. So with that, I'm just going to go down the participant list here, and you can just state your name. And let's see here. Maybe if you have any summer plans this summer, that's a good icebreaker. So I am just going to go down the list and no particular order. And I'm going to start with Carl.
Last to join, first to go. I like that. Thank you. So I'm Carl Springer with DKS. I'm leading the transportation planning piece of this work. And my summertime fun will certainly involve a lot of time on the coastal beaches.
Great. Next up, Joy Chang.
Joy Chang, Senior Planner for the City of Sherwood. I think I am just hoping to see more of the United States, more road trips.
Great. Angie.
Angie Ford, and I've been in Sherwood most of my life and been a realtor here for the last 14 years. And it sounds like we were supposed to say something about our summer. Is that right?
Yeah, if you want to, you don't have to.
I will probably be working all summer, hopefully getting out on my new paddleboard a few times.
Nice. Brian Dorsey. We'll come back to Brian. How about Brian Fairbanks?
You're in.
Oh. Brian, are you on mute?
You'd think I do these all day long that I would not run into a situation like that. My name is Brian Fairbanks. I'm the chair of the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce here in town. I am a resident and a business owner, and also active on some committees for the city. Be more, but Erica won't let me be on more. And what are we, summer?
Summer plans.
On record, I'm going to be in my backyard. Off record, St. John's for most of July.
Nice. Brian Dorsey. All right, moving along. Let's move to Dave Grant.
Dave Grant. I am a former member of City Council and also a small business owner, and probably be spending a lot of time in the forest this summer if I can.
Great. Councilor Scott.
Yeah, Doug Scott, current Sherwood City Councilor. What was the next question? Summer?
Summer.
Well, we have a Hawaii trip planned in June, which was actually supposed to be last June, but obviously that didn't happen. So looking forward to that.
I would be too. Planning Commissioner Chair Gene Simpson.
Gene Simpson, like Erica said, Chair of the Planning Commission, and summer plans, hopefully a little bit of local travel, either by car or by a little tiny airplane my husband built.
Nice. Jim Rose.
Hi, I'm Jim Rose. I'm with the school district, and my summer plans included, my kids really wanted to go camping, so we're dragging them to the top of a ski resort and staying in a yurt, and I'm looking forward to that.
Nice. John Clifford.
Yeah, so I'm John Clifford, and I'm on the board member with the Parks and Recreation, Sherwood resident since '97. And my summer plans will be doing a lot of running and cycling when all the events start opening up. And like what Angie said, I got a paddle board for Christmas, so I'll be testing that out when the water gets warm.
Nice. Julia.
Hello, Julia Hyduk. I'm the Community Development Director at the City of Sherwood. And I really don't have summer plans. I need to make summer plans, but not everybody. I've heard a few about a paddleboard, and we actually have a paddleboard, so I will probably do that. I got them last summer and I'm not very good at it. So I think I need to practice more. So maybe that's what I'll be doing.
Nice. Kennedy Hawkins.
Kennedy Hawkins. I've lived in Sherwood since 1996. I actually live down the street. I'm the end of the road on Haiti Road, so the high school is right in front of me there. Summer plans is my wife's from Scotland, so got married in Scotland and hope to see my in-laws this summer and catch up with them in the Highlands.
Great, that sounds amazing. Mike Black.
Mike Black, city resident, been here since 98, give or take. Worked for the Oregon Department of Agriculture. I'm your friendly neighborhood federal and state health inspector for foods processing. That's about it.
Great, thank you for joining.
All right, I'm doing this with summer is going to Disney World.
Nice. Rodney.
Hey, Rodney Lister, new resident of Sherwood, came here in 2019 from Canada. I'm a member of the Parks and Recreation Board, and this summer we're going to drive out to Yellowstone to recreate a trip we did 15 years ago.
Nice. How about Norman? Norman, are you on mute? We'll give him a minute here.
Am I off mute now?
Oh, you're off mute.
Okay.
We see you.
My wife Pat is with me. We've been here since 1982. The object is to, we just celebrated our 65th anniversary. And my goal is to make it to 88, which is in August. I'm taking it one day at a time. If people say have a good day, and I say at my age, they're all good. You're some better than others.
Thank you, Norman. The next person, Sam.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Brookham with Leland Consulting Group. We're part of the consultant team working on this project. We're specifically real estate, economics, and land use. My summer, like Doug, will be spent in Hawaii, or at least for a portion of it on the Big Island specifically.
Great. And pardon me if I butcher your name, because I do not know if it's Tamara or Tamara. I'm hoping that you could, correct me.
No worries, no worries. Third time's a charm. It's Tamara.
Tamara.
I know, and I'm sorry. It doesn't matter to me how you say it, though. It's all good. Most people call me Mare. It's a little bit easier. So I have been a city resident for the past 11 years. And this summer we are going to be camping like old school in tents. We sold our motor home and our 22-year-old decided he wanted to go camping again. So we bought a tent. So that paddle boarding seems to be the theme. My husband got us a couple of those for my birthday in December. So we have yet to take those out. But aside from that, we're hoping to get back to Hawaii. We've got a trip paid for, but we don't have dates yet because of COVID. So we're hoping to get back there.
How about Brian Dorsey? Are you on the line? You might be on mute. I still don't hear him, but that's okay. He's here. He is also on our committee. Let's go with Kira.
Hi, I'm Kira Haggard. I'm a planner with Angelo Planning Group. And this summer, I'm going to be taking some time off to go for a cross-country road trip. And I will also see you guys all out there on stand-up paddle boards, because it sounds like everyone took advantage of the Costco sale this winter.
And last but not least, Joe Dills.
Hi, everybody. Joe Dills with Angelo Planning Group. I'm the project manager for the consulting team and also be your facilitator for these meetings. So great to meet everybody, and I look forward to working with you. Oh, and my summer plans, I have 2 long weekends on the books, one to Pender Island up in Canada, and then the other down to Concord to play music with my brother.
All right. So Kiara, do you want to start the presentation? And we'll just jump into it here.
Yep, you should all be able to see that now.
Great. So I'm just going to give a quick project overview, and then we're going to be talking about housing trends, economic development, and transportation this evening. Next slide. So a little bit about Sherwood West. There's a total of about 1,200 acres, 126 property owners, or sorry, 110 property owners, 126 properties, and the average property size in Sherwood is about 9.8 acres. Next slide. So a little bit about the background and history here. So Sherwood West is in our urban reserve area. And an urban reserve area is designated by Metro in coordination with cities and counties. And these are the areas that will be considered for addition to the region's urban growth boundary. And they'll be incorporated into the urban growth boundary over time. They're designated for the need of additional jobs and housing for the region. So we often hear from our community, we need to keep Sherwood Sherwood. So what does this actually mean? So it means that we need to grow in a way that really preserves our character and heritage. And the 2016 preliminary concept plan for Sherwood really did this well. The plan focused on neighborhood scale, creating neighborhoods that are very walkable within 10-15 minutes to services, having plenty of access to nature and trails, and providing an opportunity for our school facilities to expand, because we all know that Sherwood is well known for our excellent school system. And then it also had a neighborhood serving retail. So residents could once again really walk to those small services like, coffee shops or other things that they may need. So why are we doing this relook now? There's a couple things that have, changed between now and 2015. One of the major changes include the new high school in this area. Another thing that is changing is that we are updating our comprehensive plan for the city. And the city's comprehensive plan is the long-range vision for the city. It talks about how and where we want to grow over time and what new developments, could or should look like. So we're developing those goals and policies in our comp plan. And that comp plan has a range of themes ranging from, housing to parks and open spaces, to transportation. And one of the things that we're really focusing on
is economic development, and how do we create a better jobs to housing balance in our community. That's been a goal, and it's also a goal of City Council. Next slide. I'm just going to turn this over to Joe.
Okay, so the slide on the screen right now is our project schedule just on one page. And this is basically our work plan. So the time is the next 13 months from the red circle to June of next year. From now, our first meeting to that point, we hope to be in the adoption phase for the concept plan. Your meeting schedule as planned is 7 total meetings, and that will be broken up at a couple of places by 2 open houses with the community. So you put those together and there is committee conversation, and then we pause and we have outreach to the community, more conversation, reach out again. Good feedback loops with people being able to weigh in on the plan as it is developing. And there'll be other public involvement activities that we'll describe to you next month in more detail. But in short, they're the website, public information, all sorts of ways of reaching out to people with email lists and so on. The steps of the process will include background discussions like we're going to have tonight about land use, transportation, etc. We will move to creating some plan alternatives. So we want to look at our choices and then narrow them to a recommended plan that the implementation for it, including funding recommendations for infrastructure and so on, will be wrapped around. Those are pretty much what I would call the traditional steps of a concept plan. But what is different here is that we have the benefit of the preliminary concept plan that was done. So interspersed with this work will be, what are the best parts of the plan that's already been discussed and developed to keep, and which ones should we maybe update, reconsider, add new ideas, and so on. So that's our work plan and our schedule in a nutshell. And let me just pause right here and see if there's any questions anybody might have on this brief introductory material. And the way this works is people can just speak up or raise hand or use the chat feature. We find that all 3 work, so we don't narrow it to one. We can come back to any of these things as you think of them as we go. Okay, so that's kind of the platform of where we've been and how we've organized the project. Let's go to the next topic here in our overview materials. And this is our meeting guidelines. Kira, if you could pull up the meeting guidelines that were in the packet. Sounds like many of you are on boards and commissions or have been involved in kind of civic affairs for a long time. So these might be familiar types of things, but let me hit a few highlights for you. In forming this committee, the City Council formed an advisory committee. So you are advisory to the Planning Commission and the City Council. Of course, you're advisory to the project team as well. That'll be supporting you all the way. There is a few rules that go along with that. So because you are an official advisory committee, and because it's a good idea, we follow public meeting law for these meetings. And so the mechanics of that are well known. There's good notice for the community. People have their own ways they can participate, and so on. But the one rule that I wanted to highlight is that the conversation between members should be at this committee table, if we had a real table. But as opposed to email threads offline. So that's the direction from within the statute is that there shouldn't be email threads that get created and circulated amongst yourself. We certainly encourage email thoughts and sharing of information. So the simple practical need is do that through Erica and through the staff as opposed to offline from the meetings. And then everything's in the sunshine in the meetings. The rest of these meeting guidelines are very familiar types of things. I won't dwell on them. They were in your packet. Everybody knows, I think, about kind of focusing on the ideas and being respectful in conversations and staying on point. You'll hear me from time to time find ways to move us forward in the interest of everybody having an opportunity to speak and managing our time well. I wanted to show you, I think it's number 9 in the list. Let's just say a few words about that. Number 10. So the approach to creating the plan is to create it basically in steps as we go. And so between now and about the 3rd meeting, we'll be identifying ideas to shape up into plan alternatives. And we want to take those out to the community and share them. I would note that as a point where we want to check in with you and say, are you comfortable with the body of work that we've discussed and we intend to take out to the community? That's sort of a incremental example of a recommendation. But then we'll move on to plan alternatives. Hey, do these 3 colored maps look like the ones we want to analyze? And on and on and on, building the plan in layers, ultimately leading to when a recommendation is forwarded for Planning Commission and City Council consideration. So with that long kind of prelude, the way we do it is to seek consensus where we can. And so I'll be asking consensus questions for you. Do we have consensus amongst the group to move forward with A, B, or C? And consensus is defined within these guidelines as being that you support the recommendation or can live with it, kind of in the interest that it's the best one to move forward as a choice from the group. Occasionally, we don't have consensus. It's perfectly natural, but we want to kind of know where people are. And so I'll be checking in with you. Can we take it to a vote here just to get a sense of how many members are leaning this way or that way? So that's kind of the procedures that we have in mind. I want to sort of overlay on that this is a conversation amongst all of you as well-informed and great participants in the community. So we're going to keep it in that spirit of searching for the best ideas and being responsive to different ones. And the consensus check-ins and the voting really hopefully will be just closure points on your conversations. Okay, so let me stop there, throw it over to you. Do you have any questions or comments on the guidelines? And maybe somebody has one they'd like to suggest. We want to leave that door open. And Kira, I'm going to ask you to help me just look around for who is wanting to weigh in.
I'm not seeing any raised hands, physical or virtual.
Okay. We'll give it another sec here. Not hearing anybody speak up. Let me do a consensus check-in. Do I take it that everybody's comfortable with the meeting guidelines, that it's going to set a good platform for our discussions? I'm seeing 1 thumbs up.
Yes.
No disagreement, no disagreements. Head nods, thumbs up. Okay. I think we have just established our first style of consensus. And the thumbs up actually is a great way to do things quickly. So let's consider these supported by the group and we'll move on and put them into practice. Okay, so to the main items of the agenda next. We have 3 topics we wanted to talk about. This is background information and kind of a first check in with you on what comments you have on these topics. I want to connect this to the next meeting. What we're doing is talking about housing, development, and transportation background information tonight. And then we'll continue, particularly the employment focus and how can we grow jobs and identify the best employment lands in Sherwood West, leading to what I'll call kind of a visioning discussion next meeting. So short way of saying that is this is the background leading to a vision discussion. Okay. So Erica, back to you. Why don't you take us through the housing information and then we'll pause for discussion.
Great, thank you, Joe. So the next few slides, I'm going to be providing an overview about housing and land uses in Sherwood West and what the city learned from its housing needs analysis, which is the technical document that helps inform our policies in our updated comp plan. And I'm also going to be talking about House Bill 2001, which was recently adopted by the Oregon State Legislature to provide more housing choices in cities throughout the state. Next slide. So shown here on this slide is the 2016 preliminary concept plan for Sherwood West. As you can see, it's primarily focused on residential land uses. The concept plan, we didn't provide any housing densities, but the shades of color really indicate the intensity of residential uses. So you can see you have that beige color, which is hillside residential. And then you have the more intense kind of smaller, or mixed use residential, which is shown in orange. Next slide. Oh, we just got a comment from Jean. Will the PowerPoint be sent to the committee or be linked online? And we'll send it both ways. We'll post it online and then we'll send it out to all committee members. Next slide. Great. So I'm going to touch on the 4 districts within the plan. Shown on this slide is the North District. In this district, there's a mix of housing organized around a new school and open spaces that include sports fields up near the intersection of Shoals, Sherwood, and Roy Rogers. And there's also a small neighborhood center shown in red that would provide smaller neighborhood retail commercial services. Next slide. So this is the what is called the Far West District. It really shows the values in the plan that have to deal with the preservation of buffers along creeks and corridors. And it also shows those trails that connect Sherwood West up to Shoals, Sherwood, and possibly going further east into the refuge. It also shows a nature park in the upper left-hand corner. I think I said that, but it also provides for a mix of residential uses as well. Next slide. Great. So this is the West District. It's framed by Elbert and Kruger roads. There's a mix of housing and it's organized around a new school. But as you all know, roughly 80 acres of this area was brought into the urban growth boundary for the development of the new Sherwood High School that currently exists today. There's a range of housing intensities that transition out from the mixed use center to hillside residential on the higher and steep slopes. Next slide. So this is the Southwest District. It's mostly residential neighborhoods varying in intensities, but as you can see, there's an opportunity for commercial development along Highway 99. And this area was really envisioned in the preliminary concept plan as a gateway to wine country, kind of having that theme of how we can capture small commercial retail employment that looks at our proximity to wine country and how we can kind of develop that theme in this area. So right now, as I said, we're working on an update to our comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan will help guide our future decisions about Sherwood. How will we grow over the next 20 years? And as part of this plan update, we did a housing needs analysis to help inform our housing policies. Next slide. So I'm just going to go over quickly kind of what we learned from this housing needs analysis. So we know that the Sherwood housing stock is predominantly single family detached homes. Our residents are aging, but Sherwood continues to attract younger families. And that's probably because we have an excellent school system. As the region grows more ethnically diverse, so does Sherwood. And then the sale of homes in Sherwood are higher than regional averages. Next slide. So over the next 20 years, our community is forecasted to add over 1,700 new households. But there is a deficit of land for housing. Even if all of Brookman were to annex into the city for development, we would still have a deficit of over 600 households. So there's a very limited supply of land in Sherwood right now for moderate to high density housing as well. Next slide. So as we move into the future and, to start to think about housing and housing choices for people, this statement right here came out of our 2018 visioning process for the comp plan. And in 2040, Sherwood has a range of housing choices for a diversity of ages and income levels, providing community members the ability to live in Sherwood throughout all stages of life. Next slide. So we have 3 housing goals as shown on this slide, and then we have multiple policies that fall underneath each goal. So these goals are what the community is striving for housing over the next 20 to 30 years. So we want to provide the opportunity for a variety of housing types in locations and at price points that meet the needs of current and future residents. We want to preserve and enhance the character of our existing neighborhoods here in Sherwood. And then we want to plan new residential developments that integrate with the existing within the existing Sherwood neighborhoods where we can all live, learn, shop, and recreate. And I believe in your technical memo that was sent out in the packet, I listed all of those draft goals and policies that we have right now for the comp plan. The comp plan is not yet adopted. We're going through that process this summer and fall. So there's going to still be plenty of conversations around these goals and policies with Planning Commission and City Council. But if you want to find more information about the comp plan, you can go online to Sherwood2040.org. And you can also look up the comp plan on the city's website as well and learn more information about that process. Next slide. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with this new Oregon House Bill 2001, Housing Choices. This bill was adopted by the Oregon State Legislature in 2019. And cities here in the Portland metro region, we need to allow more diverse housing stock. So we need to allow duplexes, triplexes, cottage clusters, and townhomes in our residential areas to provide a better mix of housing. Cities, so Sherwood, We can provide clear and objective siting and design standards for these housing types, but those standards for siting and design must also apply to single family homes. We have been in the process of creating new code language around residential design standards for all housing types for the past 5 months. We recently had a public online workshop that just ended early in May that kind of went over what we're thinking about as what these draft standards could be and what they would look like. And I'm hoping that maybe some of you know about this project and actually might have took the surveys that were up online or have learned about this project in another fashion or attended the online open house. That would be great. So right now in this phase, we have a draft of some code amendments, and we are going to be going through the public process to adopt those code standards for all housing types this fall through Planning Commission and City Council. I think we're probably going to have another open house maybe later this summer as things start to open up. So be on the lookout for that. We post a lot of information about this project online. Using the city's Facebook account and Twitter. So you might see it out there. Next year, though, I do want to let you know that we're going to be adding development standards for all housing types. So what does that mean? It means that by next spring, we're going to be looking at, allowing the opportunity for these new housing types within our residential zones in Sherwood. Just another quick thing about this bill that's pretty interesting is that Sherwood West is actually considered a master planned area per the state rules. And this means that this area will need to accommodate infrastructure up to 20 units per acre. But this does not mean that this area would have to ultimately develop out to 20 units per acre. That density could be set, lower than that. But the state is mandating that when infrastructure goes in, it needs to at least accommodate for that 20 unit per acre standard. Next slide. So I'm going to stop here and let you guys ask any questions that you have. And then we can also talk about what is important to you about planning for housing in Sherwood West. Oh, we got a question from Jean. Can interested people sign up for HB 2001 updates? And that is correct. You can sign up on the city's website, but I will probably send out that link to all committee members tomorrow, just to make sure that if you're interested, you can sign up on our interested parties list for that project. Thanks, Jean. Thanks for bringing that up.
So,
you're welcome.
Either one of these questions or comments or something that came to mind. Let's get some discussion going here.
Are you taking questions or comments about the housing policy, the full document that was sent out?
Yes.
Because one of the comments that I would have is on page 5, it talks about changes in community patterns could affect future growth, but I would think it would be important to add maybe a comment that the change to virtual work will also have an impact, and that would guide decision-making going forward.
Great. Okay, thank you, Jane. Rodney, I think I saw your hand up. Why don't we go over to you?
Yeah, I was just going to say what's important is I like the feel of Sherwood, and I think a lot of the citizens have said that, where even if it's the high density, the stuff behind the target and stuff like that, it's a nice way of going high density. So I feel important to go along with that sort of view, but I think that's what's coming up in the plan.
Great.
like Kennedy's hand is up as well.
Yeah, hey, so HB 2001 is a pretty significant change in land use planning. I'd like to know how what's been the vibe, or what's been the feedback that that the city council and others have gotten on this change, because it seems like it could be a challenge to navigate kind of what people like about Sherwood and then HB 2001.
Great question. Erica, can you summarize that?
I can. Well, first of all, nobody really likes to be told what to do from the state or from any agency. Let's just get that out there right off the bat. But as you know, as part of our work program for HB 2001, and what it allows for cities to do is, you know, for us to really come up with those design standards and put them into our development code. So when people develop, you know, new development really, you know, matches the current Sherwood, you know, aesthetic. And what we've learned through our housing residential design standard work, you know, from our last open house, people were generally positive with the draft standards that we have put out, you know, in regards to, you know, residential design, you know, window coverage, where doors should be, entry doors should be located, you know, height. You know, people love landscaping here in Sherwood. That was having a minimum landscaping requirement that was, you know, very high with folks who took that survey. So, you know, it's really, Kennedy is, you know, trying to balance what we have to do in regards to, you know, the state House bill, and balancing that out with the needs and wants of the Sherwood community and how we can make that happen.
Who else has a comment about maybe something you heard or what's important about our housing work for Sherwood West?
Looks like Doug had his hand up, and then Brian.
Okay, great.
You're muted, Doug.
I was just going to respond a little bit to what we were just talking about. I think to answer the question in a different way, we don't really know what people think about House Bill 2001 and the impacts, because it hasn't been felt yet, right? I mean, the city council certainly has concerns. The planning commission certainly has concerns. I know staff is obviously very aware. But I think the general public, the vast majority of the general public doesn't even know about House Bill 2001 and how it may impact how their city, whether that's Sherwood or any other city in the state, will be the development, the housing development, or residential development of that city may be drastically changed in the future. So I think it's one of those things, like we're doing the best we can to get out in front of controlling what we can control, which is, you know, not nearly as much as we used to be able to control. And I think, you know, I don't know that it was clear in the presentation, but for those of you who don't know, the HB 2001 basically allows for any lot to be developed at as a multifamily lot up to a fourplex. So it's not just that residential areas have to allow that, it's that any individual lot could conceptually be developed in that way, whether that's as part of a brand new development as a whole subdivision, or whether it's somebody, your neighbor, you know, deciding I'm going to tear down my house and build a fourplex there. You know, obviously there's other considerations of that involved, but that's what HB 2001 allows. And I don't think most people know about that. And I don't think most people probably will know about that until all of a sudden they see something happening next door or down the block or around the corner or on the other side of town that they didn't know was going to happen and didn't know could happen. And I think, you know, we're trying, how do we get that word out? And then how do we do what we can to, you know, incentivize the development of middle housing and density housing in the areas and in the ways that the people of Sherwood want, and disincentivize to the extent that we can the development of the types of housing or in the areas where, you know, maybe the people of Sherwood don't want it. So it's going to happen. It's how can we drive it to happen in the right place and in the right manner that the people of Sherwood want, and that's a huge challenge.
Brian, let's go over to you. And you'll need to.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Wonderful. I apologize. I was in my car. My Bluetooth didn't want to work with me. I'm Brian Dorsey, 15 plus years here in the city of Sherwood. I'm on the Police Advisory Board and a representative in that capacity here on this committee. And I am just, again, thrilled that we're in a very rare, unique place in our history, both as a city and as a state. And I think we'll all learn to dance around a lot of these unique challenges that we've got. I was interested in, with the 2016 plan, how far along did we go with that plan? Are we going to be implementing and sort of reviewing over some of the same things that maybe they had already touched on with that? Or are we going a totally different direction with regards to our goals? And since we're looking at different streets and layouts and topography and all of that.
Yeah, Erica, that's another good one for you. How does that work relate to the Sherwood West work?
Sorry, I want to take a step back. So Brian, was your question what in the 2016 plan is going to be revisited?
Correct. I mean, some of it we'll be able to keep, some of it will.
Yeah, definitely. So the 2016 plan was accepted by City Council. I don't think we want to throw, the whole plan, out the window. There are definitely some great concepts in that 2016 preliminary concept plan. I think, we want to take a look at what has changed, in the landscape. So we have a new high school. We have some new policies, some new fresh policies in our comp plan that maybe we want to, take a look at that plan through the lens of those updated policies. And then, we're going to touch on this later, some, Washington County did the urban reserve transportation study, and kind of looking at their transportation, plans and, what has changed. So we don't want to throw, I don't want to say we're going to throw out the whole plan, because that's not what we're doing. But just kind of, revisiting the landscape and revisiting those, bigger policy changes that have changed over the past couple of years here in Sherwood. Because the 2016 plan, was very, driven by residential development, as you saw in the very first slide. And now our city council is really focused on how do we create a better jobs housing balance here in Sherwood? How do we create, good paying jobs here in Sherwood that, families can, come here to live. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Does that answer it, Brian?
Yes, it does. Sorry, my mute button.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the corner.
Oh, all good. Let's go to the other Brian Fairbanks, and then we'll go to Gene.
Yeah, I don't know if my question is, I don't want it to be a derailing question. I've been thinking about it. Let me at least, it's two parts. Sherwood West master plan, when you're talking about 2001 having to do 20 units per acre, that's not just the west piece, right? That's the whole west, right? That first question makes sense?
The whole state.
Okay. And then the second part of that question is, I guess I may have to do some offline looking at this a little deeper. I think Erica said 20 units per acre, but you can adjust or amend for that. What are ways that you adjust or amend within that acre? I mean, short of having multiplexes every acre? I mean, something that was
No,
more.
so just to take a step back. So urban reserve areas are
Sorry if I took this sideways, and I can.
No. So our
Great question.
growth areas throughout the state are termed, master planned areas through House Bill 2001.
Okay.
That bill just tells us that we need to, when we start thinking about infrastructure, that infrastructure has to accommodate for 20 units per acre. But Sherwood doesn't have to grow at that density. We don't have to be at 20 units per acre. We can be, lower than that. But then, there's a lot of things we need to, think about with infrastructure too. Kind of.
Yeah, so your water, your stormwater, your sewage, your transportation have to accommodate 20 units per acre, but it doesn't mean that that's what you actually will end up being built, right? The market will ultimately drive what ends up getting built more than anything.
Yeah, something that she said a minute or two, you said, Erica, that tripped that exact thing, Doug. So that's where I caught that. Okay.
Doug, too, I do want to clarify that we don't have to set, a maximum density at 20 units per acre. It could be much, our densities could be much lower than that.
And I'll add a little bit that this is all new ground that's being covered because nobody has done one of these master plan implementation of the 2001 rules. So we'll be tailoring to Sherwood and also I think we'll be in conversation with the state saying, this is how we're doing it. And make sure that we're square. Words like accommodate a certain amount of growth. We want to be precise about what we mean.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Jean, over to you.
So I wanted to kind of chime in similar to what Councillor Scott was saying. The Planning Commission has been struggling with the House Bill 2001 and what it's going to mean to our community. And we have tried really hard to make it really clear that the city of Sherwood is not, and the Planning Commission, and certainly not the City Council, is not trying to go out and have fourplexes on every lot. And that is not our direction to try and increase that density. It's that it's mandated by the state, and we are being forced to do this because of the state's actions. And so as much as we can get the word out to people who are unfortunately going to be impacted potentially seriously by this, this is part of what House Bill 2001 did, and the Planning Commission is been desperately seeking input and community involvement, both in our residential design standards and in the process itself for ensuring that our code is updated to try and preserve the Sherwood way of life and our community as best we can. So that being said, I had a question and a comment about the net density goal for the master plan area, and if staff and the consultants, you're saying that we are the first one to be working through a master plan under HB 2001. Are we already looking at what tools are available and what our net density goals are? I read someplace in the documents 8.5 units per acre. Is that a metro mandated density, or have we been mandated or dictated to by any agency what our goal is going to be for this plan?
Erica, I can add a couple things and then why don't you pick up on that?
Sure.
I maybe misspoke a little bit because simultaneously, Cooper Mountain in Beaverton, King City West in King City when they get to their work, Frog Pond in Wilsonville, all of those expansion areas that are undergoing this kind of planning will be implementing 2001 at the same time. So Sherwood is among the first. And then Erica, to you on, is there a metro density target or requirement that we're dealing with?
So there isn't a set target at this point. We do have the 6 units per net buildable acre from the metropolitan housing rule. Sherwood right now, overall here, within the city boundary of Sherwood, we're actually a little bit over 8 units per acre within the city itself. But that helps put, a context around what density looks like. Our overall net density in Sherwood is a little over 8 units per acre.
How much longer are we going to listen to this?
Somebody was asking a question there, but I couldn't quite see who it was. Still can't tell who. Let's go over to Tamara, if we could. You've had your hand up for a bit.
Thank you. Okay, so Jean actually asked part of my question about Metro having a mandate for the density requirement. Secondarily, and I don't know, this might be a little off topic too. This is kind of my first time working in this kind of group, but I was wondering, will the city be paying for the required infrastructure, or is that going to be SDCs that are passed on to the builders?
So, typically the way development works, development will pay for their impacts. So a lot, of your fees will be going towards, infrastructure development. Of course, development, doesn't pay for everything. But, we try to collect those fees, to put the infrastructure in.
Is that something like will be planned to be put in place before neighborhoods are built out, or is it going to be kind of like the situation we're dealing with when we, drive up Roy Rogers, where they're still working on the road years later? Do you know?
I mean, nothing in the way development happens or is funded or is timeline. Really, this concept plan doesn't have any bearing on.
Okay.
That's. The rules are the rules, and we can't change that as part of this plan. And correct me if I'm wrong, Erica, but yeah.
Okay. I'm mindful of the time here on this topic. We've had good discussion, but all the hands that were up have been covered. I don't see any others. So let's move ahead to development trends, and we can mix in housing questions during that if we need to. Sam, why don't you pick up on the presentation?
Thanks, Joe. So I'm going to throw it back to Erica just very briefly. But first of all, hi everybody. I think you got our memo on the development trends and implications as part of the packet. But just to give you a quick overview of what that really is we took a pretty high level baseline analysis or assessment of trends from a development perspective, from an economic development perspective, both regionally and locally, and I'll get into what some of our findings were, what kind of our next steps are in taking this information forward. But if we go into the next slide, and Erica, you can comment about the policy implications.
Sure. So, over the past couple of years, economic development here in Sherwood has become a bigger theme for what the community wants and desires. And with council, their number one top priority right now is economic development and how do we really create a better jobs to housing balance here in Sherwood. I know that Councillor Scott, you're on the line. I don't know if you want to pipe in about this.
Yeah, I mean, I can. I would just reiterate what you said. I think Sherwood's been a bedroom community for a long time, and there's a lot of, and I think it will be for a long time. But I think we really need to try to balance that, or improve the jobs housing balance of this tax base, going forward more than it is, for a couple of reasons. One, I just think having a future where more people can work closer to where they live, I think is the direction that everybody wants to head in. So having and not retail jobs, right? Like, we'll continue to have retail jobs, and there's nothing wrong with retail jobs, but we also need employment in industrial employment kind of jobs, going forward. So really that's a focus of ours. And the other thing that does is the people of Sherwood enjoy a lot of great assets and benefits that our community provides: parks, schools, libraries, and other amenities, and those are expensive. And so in order to continue, and budget compression year over year, happens every year. Our budget is harder and harder to balance because of budget compression, largely driven by PERS, among other things. And so it will become harder and harder going forward to provide the residents of Sherwood all of the amenities that they want and deserve, without also bringing in more of a industrial tax base into the city boundary to pay for those services. So those are the two real drivers behind why we want to get this. I think our mix is like, I don't want to quote a number because I'm probably wrong, but we want to improve. So we're trying to track that mix, and we're trying to get that mix growing annually, year over year. So that's what our focus is on. And I think while I'm talking, I think there's a real opportunity. If you looked at, I think the packet that was sent out ahead of time, one of the things that I noticed that jumped off the page at me is, if you look at all of the development that's happening, on Roy Rogers and Shoals, along Roy Rogers Road, the King City development, the Tiger development that's coming online, that were referenced, that are getting ready to be built out or starting to be built out. It's all housing. And so there's a real opportunity for us to do a mix of housing and employment, right? And so because everyone else is opening up housing land, and if we open up some large swaths of employment land, there's a real opportunity for us to capture some of that market that other people aren't going after right now. So that was something I was excited about seeing.
I had one more comment, just from a layman's perspective, having not been in part of the council and the budget, but understanding that for every dollar that a resident pays, the amount of benefit they get from the city services exceeds the dollar that they pay. And in order, what Councilor Scott's talking about in balancing the tax base is commercial and industrial, for every dollar they pay in tax, they use less than 100%. And so we need some of the tax dollars that come in from commercial industrial to help lift the very expensive services that we as residents pay. And our dollar of tax revenue doesn't cover the more than $1 in benefit we get.
Sam, let's go back over to you. And this is great. I want to prioritize committee discussion. So if you could gear yours to kind of the executive summary version of your presentation, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So real quick, I think I just gave an intro of this, but yeah, we're just looking at the conditions, the land use and development conditions specifically, that factor into all these things we're already talking about. So next slide. We'll take everything, these discussions. We're having a bunch of interviews with developers and brokers and economic development agency partners and industry experts as well, that will help us understand more of these nuances, right? All of these opportunities for Sherwood West that build off of the existing conditions and the past development trends that we're already seeing. So next. And part of our work was looking at the economic opportunities analysis that was conducted in 2018. So it was a snapshot of supply and demand forces basically over the next 20 years and looking at what that means for land needs, both commercial and industrial land. And basically what it said was, there's a regional demand for, or a local demand for large industrial sites. They're in limited supply. There's new residential growth driving demand for various things. But Sherwood is really reliant on new growth areas that have been brought into the city, including Tonkin, which I'll mention in a second, for meeting some of those land needs that will drive that job growth. Next. And as Doug mentioned, we consider the Sherwood market area as part of this Southwest Metro region, which also includes a number of these other large growth areas, including Tiger River Terrace, both of them, Cooper Mountain and Beaverton and King City West as well. And Doug's absolutely right in that there's about 17,000, or give or take, households planned, and they're not going to happen overnight, but they will be developing out at different varying rates over the next 20 years, and that'll really bring a lot of people to that area that will generate demand for various things, and perhaps there are opportunities in Sherwood West for creating new employment or retail, and bringing some of those folks down into Sherwood as well. Next. I won't talk too much on this, but essentially all the big yellow bars you see there is single family residential. So essentially from the mid-90s through the recession of 07-08, what we saw was predominant single family residential construction and a little bit of other stuff, but the general mix was single family. In recent years, since 2010, there's been a real uptick in non-residential development, so more employment, more industrial retail. We've seen almost half of Sherwood's industrial and retail development built in this time. So there's clearly some trends and some renewed interest that we can really build off here. Next. We looked at the Tonkin employment area, and for those of you maybe not familiar, it is the new growth area that's at various stages of annexation into the city limits on Tualatin Sherwood Road and Oregon Street, northeast of the city. And one of the things that was quite evident to us in terms of the economic opportunities analysis that looked at some of the land supply and demand conditions for new employment was really factoring in a lot of vacant land in the Tonkin employment area. But what we understand now is that there's a lot more development interest, particularly for the larger sites in this area. And what you've got left with is everything in gray, essentially. So these are the internal sites that don't necessarily have good access. They're smaller, generally less than 10 acres, which it doesn't provide for great opportunities when you're thinking about large users coming in and generating a lot of jobs. So what this really means is there are opportunities elsewhere, namely Sherwood West, for capitalizing on some of the these supply issues, providing employment lands, particularly larger sites. So those are a couple of things that we'll be thinking about going forwards, and I'll wrap up on the next slide. And as I said, yes, there's a potential shortage of land for employment when you factor in all of these other things. And some of the emerging trends that we think of in terms of remote working and e-commerce, there's a lot of positive trends, or a lot of trends that can be quite positive for employment-based development prospects in Sherwood West. we're seeing a serious uptick in e-commerce, people online shopping over the past year. That was a trend that was emerging pre-pandemic, and it's only been exacerbated as a result. So that means there's all sorts of different things that can come from that, including new industrial, smaller industrial distribution warehouses, etc. And the other thing that's not on the slide here is we'll be looking at wine-related prospects as well, seeing if that's an opportunity that we can capitalize on, wine-related retail or hotel, hospitality, and also looking at the tech sector, understanding that Sherwood West is really in the middle of a lot of high-tech development and office and flex space that, maybe there's opportunities there. So we'll be delving into all of those things in our next little phase of work, and yeah, stay tuned. So I think that's the executive summary there.
Okay.
As Joe requested.
Yeah.
Can move into questions.
So same questions. What questions do you have about what you've heard in this presentation, and what is important to you about planning for economic growth in Sherwood West? And I'll just highlight a couple of things that we've already heard. Jobs, housing balance, the benefits to the city's tax base with employment type properties, capturing the potential of the new growth areas on the western part of the urban growth boundary, and sort of tailoring to the new times, work at home and so on. We heard a lot of discussion of that in the technical advisory committee. So let's now throw it over to you guys. Questions or thoughts about what's important to be folding into our Sherwood West planning?
I have a quick question about what just went over with Tonquin, actually. So going over the Tonquin and looking at that map that you showed, Sam, earlier, that showed, yeah, there's some big areas there that you can have industrial there, the yellow it looks like there, and then the little small areas and stuff like that. Were you looking at that as potential residential in those little areas? Or is this all going to be commercial?
So this is it's an industrial area, and the red line there, it's maybe a little bit hard to see, is everything that's that indicates the city boundaries. So pretty much everything in the middle there is not yet annexed into the city limits. When it is annexed, I understand that it will be zoned industrial.
Gotcha. Okay, just a clarification is all I wanted.
Others? Let's say, oh, a couple of hands are up. Let's go to Kennedy.
Yeah, so my question involved, so as we're looking to bring more jobs in Sherwood so people can work and live in Sherwood, has the city council thrown out any ranges of salaries or hourly rates of jobs they're looking to create, with this emphasis more toward the business side or economic development side of the Sherwood West relook?
I mean, I can just, and we haven't spoken about specific dollar amounts, right? But I think we all are recognizing that, we aren't looking at minimum wage or near minimum wage, retail type jobs. Is like we have a lot of that. And we'll continue to have more of that, as obviously that comes with residential, right? You're going to continue to grow, retail regardless. So really what the focus is more on things that are at or above the median or average wage in Sherwood, which I think is around 80 to 90,000 or something right now. So that's really the target. We don't have a specific number, but we're really talking about, professional, industrial wage, industrial type of, high paying jobs that support people who, that are along the lines of the average or median wage in Sherwood.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought, Doug. I just wanted to confirm that, because I think in the materials it said, I think the average wage was like 78,000 or something like that. But okay, that's helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Rodney, let's take your question or comment.
I was just going to ask Sam if he can give us some examples of good employment land use and some that might not be. Like, is a mall good or is a mall bad, or what's a good? Is a university good or bad? Like, just what's good, what's bad, kind of thing.
I think that's generally a policy question, right? It fits within whatever vision you've identified for an area. Like that, every different land use serves different purposes, and I know that's kind of evading the question here. I think what I can say is that land uses like malls, for example, are relatively low density, low value generating uses, and there's a few of those things. And if the city's primary goals are high wage job production, retail, especially mall retail, probably isn't a factor that high on the scale of what's good and bad, because retail employment does pay on average lower than most other land use sectors. So, best within that criteria of good and bad, quote good and bad, you're probably more looking at, universities would fit in there as a higher paying economic driver as well, fitting another criteria, but also manufacturing, light industrial, transportation, logistics, those sort of industrial uses.
Yeah, I think, sorry, go ahead, Sam.
And then of course, most office using employment is also a higher density generator of jobs too. It generates more jobs per acre or per square mile or per square foot or whatever the metric you want to use for density of jobs is. It produces more, and so you get a higher cluster of jobs. Maybe they don't pay as well, but generally speaking, your office using spaces are going to be good on that criteria scale. Hope that made sense.
Let's keep going with other questions. Let's go Jean, and then after that, Brian Dorsey.
On the map, I just wanted, before we lose it, the colored areas, most of them are either already under development or the application, correct, Erica? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that we've already seen the application for the red, orange, and the orange. The blue one's already developed, and I see names and square footages for the yellow and green. I think they're already spoken for. So that's where I saw in the report that said our economic opportunities report is, we're even more constrained than what we thought we had, because most of our lands are already, a lot of the big lots have already been gone and cherry picked off. So my comment question about this for the plan itself is thinking about kind of a destination job that either people would come to the community to recreate, or that the job is great income producing, but also that it has low impact. So there's not a lot of extra traffic generated, not a lot of heat, smell, glare, noise produced, and that we can find those types of businesses that fit in what we are already considering a large residential area. So those are, when I look at that area, I want to make sure that I don't know how you do it, so you do the right thing's the really easy thing, but look towards job opportunities that have those characteristics, and how do we incorporate that into the plan so that when we come to codifying this, that we get those types of developments to come into this area.
Okay, good idea. Okay, Brian Dorsey.
Yes, back in December, as part of the police advisory board, we got to hear from Bruce Coleman, City of Sherwood Economic Development Manager. Is he still in that capacity for us?
Yes.
All right. Would it be possible, because he was able to give some brilliant insight into both our desire to grow this sector, but also some of the challenges of growing the sector in our community as it stands, such as not being a place where there is a university or college that can feed into some of these type of businesses. Will there be an opportunity to have him to speak to us and give us sort of, I think he'll give us some definite clarity on some of the challenges that we face with this and maybe how to move forward and better position ourselves.
Erica, you want to answer that?
Yeah, so Bruce Coleman is definitely part of our team and is providing us valuable feedback on what we're presenting to you as a group. And certainly we can definitely invite him to our CAC meetings so he can, chime in about economic development opportunities that, and things that he knows that he's an expert on in his field.
Yeah. He's brought a lot of energy to the project already, actually. So great idea. And I think the next meeting in particular, Erica, will be a good one to have him.
Yes, most definitely.
Be at the table with us here. Okay, so not seeing any other hands up, but let's just give it a minute. Somebody who might have had another idea or comment or question. Okay. I think then we'll just go ahead and move on to transportation. So Carl, you're up.
Thanks, Joe. Glad to be speaking with you. So again, this is just background information, kind of the big issues that we're aware of. Going forward, we haven't done any new work yet, but we just wanted to make you aware of what we know going into this. So next slide, Kira. So you've already seen this information one way or another in the prior slides, but basically there's lots of capacity for growth in the greater, what I call the greater Roy Rogers Road corridor. A number of different sites between Beaverton and Sherwood that are predominantly household heavy. There are some plans for complementary uses, but they're not significant really. And so those are all factors that we have to take into account and when we're looking at these broader regional facilities and how that's going to change over time. The comment related to jobs and housing, it to me is a great thing from a transportation point of view. That to me gets to more efficiency of use of the system. It diversifies how a facility is used over the day. And it also, for local business and service type professionals, it balances the demand for their services across the day instead of just at nights and weekends. So there's benefits kind of all around for that kind of a dynamic. Next slide. I'm just going to highlight a few of the big road projects that'll again influence this area. You probably know about all these, but for those that don't, Roy Rogers Road is the key corridor. It's the fastest, I believe, corridor in this part of the county. There is a project on Washington County's books to upgrade that facility to 5 lanes between Chicken Creek and Borchers Road. That's happening by spring of 2024, according to their latest estimates. I would say, based on the work we were doing actually in neighboring cities, that Roy Rogers Road will bear the brunt of the growth for north-south travel. 99W north of Sherwood is essentially at capacity during peak hours as it goes up through Tigard. So growth will spill over on Roy Rogers Road in a dramatic fashion. Next slide. So this is the Brookman Road extension, which only happens if and when the Brookman Addition area comes in and annexes to the city. There's been significant planning on this lately. The county and the city both have kind of revisited the work that was done about 10 years ago. And the latest thinking is that Brookman would be upgraded to a 3-lane arterial as an interim step, but still providing right-of-way or room property acquisition for an ultimate 5-lane section through there. This map doesn't show it, but if you continue that line to the west, you cross 99 and intersect with Chapman Road, which is the southern boundary of the Sherwood West planning area. So it's a significant facility in that sense. Next slide. This diagram is highlighting what I think is one of the key roads in the plan because of the topography and because of the environmental limitations, but because of the creek, the lovely creek you have kind of diagonally rolling through this property, it makes north-south connections kind of a premium. And so right now that the red dash on the map there is roughly the existing alignment of Elmwood Road today. The prior plan kind of looked at potentially realigning that a bit as shown in the underlying map. It kind of jogs off to the west and then back down to the south. So those are all decisions that need to be kind of revisited and re-verified through this process, I would imagine. Lots of upgrades to that facility and then basically converting it to an urban cross section. The county's current plan for that is a 3-lane arterial section. And so those who are not familiar with traffic engineering terminology, 3-lane means one travel lane in each direction with space in the middle for a center turn lane. As I'm looking at this site, I mean, one of the things we regularly run into in planning on the urban edge is kind of balancing out the edge. So ideally, you know, if this were in the center of the planning area, center of the metropolitan area, you would want another significant north-south facility further to the west. And that's a challenge in this case because of the terrain that's faced out there. So we'll be looking for opportunities to do that as best we can. Next slide, Kira. The last piece kind of focuses on two components. One is the obvious kind of gorilla in the room, 99W for walking and biking from the west side. It's a barrier. It's a barrier for motor vehicles as well, but even more so with walking and biking. Transit access is very limited here. It's a good distance to the nearest stop for the Route 94 service that's out running today. I think the thinking going into this is a couple points. One is we'll be thinking about a future where we do have some kind of regular transit service north-south that's not on 99. So basically getting this area ready for transit development, transit kind of services. The other piece I should mention more clearly is that, you know, because of the terrain, because of the mix of uses, I think there's some great opportunities for kind of a more robust thinking about trails and multi-use pathways so you have opportunities to walk and bike and get around away from the roadways themselves. So the graphic on this slide is attempting to illustrate the concept of maybe considering something in the middle, what we traffic folk call microbiology. No, not microbiology, micromobility, that one. That means the smaller scale options for people to travel other than walking or biking or driving their car. So there's lots of things that are available kind of in the middle that allow you to get to short range destinations comfortably and conveniently. So that might be part of the mix, especially given the fact that we're looking at a higher proportion of jobs in this area than we originally did. That makes that more of a viable choice to consider. So let me pause there and see what questions are out amongst the group at this point. I think there's the next slide. If you want to go on to that, Kira highlights those other questions.
You guys have been great about using the raised hand feature. So go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question or comment. While we're thinking, I'll share a discussion we had at the Technical Advisory Committee that part of the planning issues for Elwert, the north-south road that was shown with the red dashes, is that once this area is built out, it will be the seam between neighborhoods with existing residents to the east of it and new residents on the west of it. And how do we make it as good a street as possible. The traffic will want to go there. So we have to do good planning to make sure that it works for people and works for crossings and the emergency providers and all of those other needs. Okay, Rodney, over to you. What's your question or comment?
I was just wondering if Carl could expand on what's the possibility of a north-south that's not Elwart Road? Just all the cities I've kind of lived in, eventually they get to the size that a bypass gets put in. So you could bypass the residential zone. Just seeing with all the residential, is it impossible to go west to do a bypass in the future? Or is it something that this community, this Sherwood West has to address that issue?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, there's, within the framework of this planning process, I think we need to go with what's currently being anticipated. And my comment was really more about east, west, north-south connectors within the planning area, as opposed to a mile or two further to the west. I know the county, Washington County has done significant work looking for alternatives to connect from basically this part of the county up to job centers in Hillsborough and Beaverton. So there was a concept called the Southern Arterial, which would run along Brookman Road to Chapman Road and keep working its way west and north from there on county facilities. And that's the only thing I've ever seen that contemplates that kind of thing, but it's not, that's one of those longer range thinking kinds of facilities. I don't believe that's in the adopted plans at this point. Is something that's going to be planned and funded. But I was thinking more within the context of the community that we're looking at here, because what you don't want is you don't want a situation where people are forced to kind of filter into one primary north-south route, whether they be walking or biking or driving their car. We want to give them options so that it's more of a balanced, natural, direct path kind of a flow. That's kind of more what I was thinking about, kind of more local neighborhood scale streets as opposed to big regional byways.
And I think that's the comment I heard from some others, was that if that's an easy route, it'll be used by a lot more than just the Sherwood residents. It'll become the Newburgh group bombing down Elwart, trying to get past the problems on 99W. So
that's certainly something to consider. I mean, that's part, I think that's part of Joe's comment about what is it we should be doing with Elwart to serve its primary function of, access and mobility for the community without sacrificing, being the convenient cut through like you're mentioning.
Okay, Jean, over to you.
Oh, Carl stole my thunder. Oh, question. It's, you said it very eloquently. I think as a committee, we need to have that as one of our topic items, because if we make that a very straight line and a thoroughfare that ends up being 5 lanes through, we could be not connecting our community, but dividing our community. And I think the original plan, the reason for the jog off to the left not only was to preserve the creek corridor and to have our crossing be as narrow as possible, but to also provide for a little bit of traffic calming at a regional level. And so as a community, and maybe part of our topic as we go forward, is to find out how we want this road to look, and then if there's any other opportunities for other north, south, or other, do we want this to be the bypass? Because then it would bring potentially more economic development at the cost, but what is the cost?
Right.
So I'd like to hear a lot of input on that one.
Well, and to me, the big question there is, I mean, that's a county-owned road. And so it feels like our desires for what we want that to be and the counties may actually be in competition with each other, right? Like, we don't want it to become this super highway that connects the north and south round, but that's probably actually what the county does want to use it for. So I don't know how we manage through that and ultimately how that gets decided, but that's a question I have.
A question back on that, Doug or others. Has there ever been discussion about jurisdiction of that road transferring over time to city?
Maybe Dave can speak to that. I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any formal conversations.
It's a great question. I mean, right now as it stands, it has never been, it's kind of on the edge of town and it's a county road. I think as this plan gets developed and you look at this map, it's clearly a relevant topic. Like if this road is entirely within Sherwood, maybe that's something that we should be talking about with the county.
Okay. I don't see other hands up, so I'll go back over to you, Rodney. Maybe something on the same topic you were.
Well, just Brookman, I just want to confirm Brookman will eventually hit I-5, right? Is that the plan?
Not anymore.
Okay, so that won't be like the new 12th and Sherwood Road.
So
No,
Carl,
it won't be.
Carl, fill
There
us
won't
in
be
a
an
little bit.
as far as I know, there won't be an interchange. I mean, it'll get to I-5. It'll be cross I-5. It's supposed to parallel down in the Basalt Creek area. It's then supposed to parallel the existing northern Wilsonville interchange, but not have ramps onto I-5. It's basically relieving the Ellingson interchange from local trips to some degree, right? So I don't think there's a plan for that connection to have ramps onto I-5.
Okay. Other transportation questions, comments?
Is there any mass transit coming into Sherwood in the long-term plan?
Another great question. You're my great question guy. Good job. So yeah, there's really little out here on the west side in this corridor right now. There's no specific short range plans, but because of this, all this housing growth out here and well, just the development in general, I know each of these concept plans up and down this corridor are asking that very question. What are we doing long-term for transit service here that's not on 99, running on kind of infrequent basis to downtown? What's my option if I want to take a bus, say, up to Beaverton or over to Hillsborough or somewhere in between? That those kinds of questions haven't been asked, but it's a natural, because like I said, the Roy Rogers Road corridor in the long range will be carrying a similar volume to what 99W north of Sherwood carries. It'll be in the 30 to 40,000 vehicles a day range.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Looks like we've reached it on this topic. Good first discussion of transportation. So that takes us to the last part of our meeting here. Erica, did we have any public comments that came in prior to the meeting?
We did not.
Okay. All right. Then we're up to next steps. Let's go ahead and I'm going to move my window here of hands. So just a little look ahead on the next meetings with this kind of group of background topics. We're going to take the economic opportunities to the next level, as Sam said. So we'll be reporting what we heard from the development community and kind of starting to zoom in a little bit on what we think are the economic opportunities for Sherwood West. We have a public engagement process for this. We'll share what that is. But then we'd like to take a look at the vision work that was done for the preliminary concept plan. And we haven't figured out the exact exercise yet, but have a discussion about how does our updated vision and goals for this plan shape up. And then that leads to some concepts that'll happen at our subsequent meeting in August. So that's where we're headed. And I think we're to anything else. It's next steps. Erica, anything we've overlooked, something to communicate with the group?
I don't have anything, but I do know that Jean just posed a question to the group about possibly pushing the start time back to 5:30 or 6.
So we have one agree. We have 2 agrees. People are using the chat feature.
Thumbs up, it looks like.
Okay. At 5:30. Should we try 5:30 for the next one? Is that the Erica, I'll look to you. Where do we go with the update? Looks like people are flexible to move to 5:30.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like. So let's aim for 5:30 next time.
Okay. All right. Seeing a couple of thumbs up on that. Okay, then I think that's it from our side. Appreciate everybody with a good kickoff meeting here, and enjoy your evening. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Erica, are you still here?
Did somebody ask me a question?
Oh, Erica, I was just going to ask you something unrelated to this meeting when people drop off here.
Okay. And make sure we're stopped